did you come from? Did you just hide?
Are you not the babysitter?
No, I'm not the babysitter. I'm my friend.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
And I'm Ron.
This is our review of The House of the Devil, starring Jocelyn Donahue, Tom Noonan, Dee Wallace, and Mary Woronov. Directed, written, edited, probably paid for mostly by Ty West. Released in 2009 on a very small budget. You ever find a number? I never found one either.
No, I got nothing.
Yeah, I got nothing on that either. I think the best estimates I've seen are anywhere from around 30 to 50. But that's stretching it. It made over $100,000 at the box office, but this movie found its fame with the home audience, incredibly well reviewed, and has led to, it's part of what I would call a horror renaissance or a spook renaissance, the old school haunted house stuff. Now, we actually got this requested on Twitter, and so we said, hey, you know what, we can work that one in, and you and I talked about it offline, and you've seen this before. You've actually reviewed this before in written form, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, at my long dormant, my most recent long dormant movie review website.
So, we'll post a link to it, maybe get you some fresh hits with this release of this podcast. But I've seen this one before a couple of times, and then watched it a couple of times for this review. And I want to ask you before we get into this, where are you on these retro modern movies, particularly in the horror genre?
I'm actually a really big fan of them, assuming they do it right, if they have the patience to kind of execute movies at a slower pace like you would have seen back in the 80s or the 70s. Mm-hmm. I have a real soft spot for them. Maybe it's because I've only been watching the good ones, and I haven't ruined it by watching garbage yet. But it's been, it's been a positive renaissance for me. I've been very happy with it.
Yeah, you hang around this podcast long enough, I promise you we'll get to a couple of those bad ones. So, but not this time, I don't think. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're both going to give this some favor just based on what I've read from you in the past and just talking about it. I know how I feel about it, but I'm with you. I'm with these if they do it with that stipulation. Do they let it build? Do they let that slow pace? And I'll be honest, I attribute that to something from the 70s that carried over into some of the late 80s, but really is more of a 70s thing, in my opinion. And I think about the John Carpenter Halloween 1978. I mean, that is a slow burn of a film, and if it had tried to go faster, it would have been horrible. So the fact that one takes forever to get anywhere and do anything is part of the build up, and I think that makes it fantastic. And that's part of the intrigue of this, because I'll tell you how I saw this, Ron. This was a late night, and for whatever reason, I don't watch MTV anymore, but I happened to cross it as I was flipping channels and couldn't sleep one night about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I saw this girl dancing around this house listening to an old Fix song. And I thought, what is this? Is this one of their retro videos or something? Did I miss this one? And I ended up watching, I guess, what was the last half of it at that point, and I had to look it up. Scrambled around on the TV Guide online, found out it was something called The House of the Devil, and I thought, what in the world is that? Then turned around and sure enough, it's on the online streaming sites, and I said, well, I'm definitely going to invest some time into that. Watched it the next day, and really liked it. So I was game to go back and look at this one again.
Oh yeah, definitely. Last time I watched it. Or the first time I watched it, I guess I should say, it was my wife DVR'd it for me off of, I think it's Chiller?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Chiller. Yeah.
Or maybe the other one. There's another one that also is basically Chiller. But yeah, she found it randomly on one of those channels and recorded it for me, and it turned out to be really good. And I'm not even sure why she did it at the time.
I'll tell you, it is one of those things that if you don't know, you're not looking for it, you don't know anything about it. My wife had not seen it, so on my second watching of it before this review, I had her watch it with me. She tends to go for most of the horror stuff I go for, and I'll tell you about her reaction as we get into it. She definitely had one to it as we do this, but we wanted wanted to do this more over, though, folks. When we're doing Halloween right now, you know we've got another Leprechaun coming somewhere down the pipe. But because it was requested, we don't always, fulfill the request, but we try to when there are things that we know we can get people on board for. And this one just seemed to fit right into the area of what we're doing in what we generally call Shocktober, where we do our scary movies and thrillers and stuff. And this one is a good departure from the majority of the Halloween series, and it's certainly a departure from Leprechaun. So I'm down to give it a run and to see what we can find in it. So Ron, why don't you go ahead and give us the plot summary for this one, then you and I will talk about the movie.
After moving into a new apartment, college student Samantha, as played by Jocelyn Donahue, is desperate for a way to make a few more bucks. When a man named Mr. Ullman, played by the legendary Tom Noonan, comes on campus looking for a babysitter, Samantha jumps at the opportunity. Samantha quickly learns that the job is not quite what was advertised. He tells Samantha that she just has to stay in the house with his elderly mother-in-law, the devil as himself, while he and the missus go out to celebrate the lunar eclipse. As if that wasn't weird enough, as the night goes on, we learn that Samantha is to be used in a ritual to birth a child of Satan. Samantha escapes, and after a chase to a cemetery, she shoots herself. But in the final scene, we see a nurse reassuring Samantha that she lived and will be fine. In fact, both she and her unborn child will be just fine.
Oh, that ending. We're going to talk about that. But we talked about the old school horror vibe, popularity back with things like The Conjuring and Annabelle, which is out in October of 2014. We've talked a bit about the style, and you put a note in here too. And I'd forgot Jocelyn Donahue is in Insidious too, which is another pair of those films.
Yeah, she plays the young version of Lorraine.
Which I think the old version is played by Barbara Hershey, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, that is correct.
I thought I was right about it. Yeah, I had forgotten about that because I've only seen Insidious 2 once, and I was okay with it. It wasn't grand. I liked the first one quite a bit, mainly on the recommendation of your wife, as I was going off about a movie called Sinister on Twitter that I just absolutely love from a couple years ago. She's like, you must see Insidious. So, and I wound up watching that one too and like it. But yeah, that's part of this same renaissance. So, I associate a lot of this stuff with Jason Blum and Blumhouse, though this is not a Blumhouse production by any means, but I think he's responsible for a lot of these things stemming off the Paranormal Activity movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's kind of the guy who has made it his business to bring, thoughtful, relatively well-crafted horror into movie theaters. And I give the Blumhouse logo a lot of respect. I generally know if I see his name attached to something or if I see the little Blumhouse bumper, I know it's going to end up being pretty good.
It's going to be something I generally go for. And again, this one is not one of those, but it's in the same vein, I think. Ty West is definitely his own guy. And there's one thing that needs to be said from the beginning. I mean, this is most assuredly his thing. This is his baby all the way. Not only did he write it, did he help get the production together on it, did he direct it, but he edited it. So, I mean, he had his hand in every step of the way for this one. Kind of like Carpenter did with the original Halloween. I thought about that as I was watching this and preparing notes for it. I said, this is definitely his creation. Like it could be, in another era, it would have been Ty West's The House of the Devil, but we don't really do that anymore.
I think it should be Ty West, South of the Devil, anyway.
Yeah.
And I really think he's going to get there at some point, barring any major missteps. Because the only thing he missed from going full Carpenter was doing the music.
Yeah, this is true. That's the only, and he used iconic music of the day. I mean, the soundtrack to this is definitely right out of 1983, 84. And I wanted to say that from the start here. We do this movie, and it's the old school stop caption or stop motion with the credits on the screen and with the song playing. And I wanted to ask you, when is this movie? I mean, I would guess before 1985 is what I felt like.
Yeah, it definitely feels 1983 or maybe 1984.
Right.
It actually even looks like that time period because he went back and he used a lot of the 80s shooting techniques, late 70s, early 80s. He used 16 millimeter film.
Yep.
He used in-camera zooms instead of dolly zooms. So rather than moving the camera forward, you just hit the zoom button and really close in on faces. I think what really makes this one work, I mean, especially considering the raft of others in the same genre that kind of came in this movie's wake, is the attention to like 80s details.
Yeah, it definitely feels the 80s details. And my wife is one that will pick out stuff that doesn't fit when it's trying to be period and stuff. And I asked her specifically, I was like, when is this? And she said, it looks like the 80s. And then she even asked me, so when was this made? And I said, this was 2009, So I give total credit to him and his team for getting the aesthetic right. And I think that's a smart thing to do. The thing about horror films today is technology has kind of ruined anything to be scared of, right? Having a cell phone and constant connectivity to the internet. I mean, if Samantha had any of those things, a GPS, any of that stuff, none of this would have worked, right?
Even one of those like 80s car phones, like
the
hooked
bag
on a
phone?
hooked on a brief. Yeah, the bag phone.
Yeah. So I agree. Anything like that would have set a lot of this off. But as it turns out, she is trapped by her tech, but she is technology. I mean, she's walking around with that Sony Walkman. My brother had one of those. I remember that distinctly, man. I mean, what's funny to me is there's a generation of people that don't understand the relationship between a number 2 pencil and an analog cassette tape. But I mean, that saved a lot of music, for a lot of people. So, yeah, but no, I like the whole bit that it opens up with her in the apartment and, the cameo from Dee Wallace, who sometimes credited as Dee Wallace Stone. Dee Wallace, I mean, she's from everything. Critters, Cujo. I think she was in one of the Howlings, right? I mean, she's an 80s and 70s and 80s scream queen for sure.
She was, wasn't she? No, she was she E.T.'s mom?
She was E.T.'s mom, correct. I've been forgetting one of her most famous roles.
Not E.T.'s mom.
Yeah, Elliot's mom. I get what you mean. So
maybe in a deleted scene.
The adoptive mom. Well, if Spielberg had his way with that sequel, so that we'll never get to see. But yeah, I've always a recognizable face, and if you're going to do these kind of movies, I think part of the thing that makes them work is the stunt casting. I think a lot of, Quentin Tarantino does this a lot, right? And in the horror genre, Rob Zombie really does it a lot. It's all about putting people in there that it's almost ironic, or it's stunt casting. And I think the entire cast here is specifically not our lead, but everybody else is cast because of the look they have and the thing that about them when they walk on the screen. And Dee Wallace I expected her to actually have more of a role in this. And I was going to ask you, do you think, how would you have been with it if she had shown up at the end as maybe the witch lady or something like that?
I like that she didn't come back in some sort of evil role. I like you, I expected to see her at least more often, but I don't think you cast a Dee Wallace to play evil. Yeah. She just, maybe it's, I went to a tattoo and horror convention in Nashville, probably getting close to 10 years ago now, to show you how old I am. And one of the guests there was Dee Wallace before she dropped the stone. Yeah. And she was like the nicest, sweetest little tiny lady imaginable. Well, that's really what she plays here. I mean, she's very fair with Samantha. She's like, look, $300, just get it to me by Monday, honey. It's okay. I get a good feeling about people. You seem like you're okay, And what we'll learn about Samantha is the reason she wants to move off campus is she has what may be the worst roommate of all time, right? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the old college trope of if there's the sock on the door, then don't bother knocking or whatever. Well, apparently the roommate's into that like all hours of the day and night, sleeps all day. The place is trashed. She doesn't take good messages. It's a mess, right? Like I would see why she'd want to move off campus.
Yeah, her roommate may have been one of the first people to discover cocaine in that particular college because she certainly acts like it.
Well, she does. She has that look, like, and definitely the, 80s tramp thing. But we know, and that's the other thing, too, is two of the first people we're introduced to besides Samantha, we don't really know anything else about. We never see again. They're never in another scene, but they're important characters to set the scene for who she is and her whole opportunity, right? Because she's, dorm life not so good, so she's going to do it. She needs money, so she goes by the old job board. And I'm old enough to remember, even in the 90s, we had these at my little college. And I thought, man, and I work at a college now, and I'm like, well, you can't hang paper anywhere. I mean, it's not the thing to do. But back in the day, people hung the posters with the little tear tags. And every now and then I'll see somebody do one for selling football tickets or something, but not for jobs anymore, which is seems like something of the years gone by.
Even like when I was in graduate school, again in the early 2000s, I would still see that sort of thing. Like 2004, I went to U of L, and they had they had one of those big boards in like the common or whatever, the big 4-sided thing, 8 feet tall, just absolutely riddled with staples from generations past.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a throwback. Plus, also seeing a payphone. That was fun. Yeah,
an actual working payphone. So it's been a while since I laid my eyes on one of those, but again, it sets the whole scene. And she makes the call, and this is the thing that immediately sets me off nerve, is that the phone, goes to a message, and she, leaves it, and then it rings back to her. And I had forgotten the days when you could call back to a payphone, and I thought, oh wow.
Yeah, that in and of itself was. Immediately had me primed for weirdness.
Yeah.
Because one of the many strange phobias I had when I was a child of that era was that I would walk by every payphone I would walk by, I would check the change thing.
Yep.
In the hopes of finding change, or in the fear of finding like a dirty AIDS needle.
Yeah, razor blade. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I was also petrified that the phone would start ringing and I would be expected to answer it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's the scary thing. I remember one of the Die Hard movies was totally based on that still. Like, they were still pulling that off even that late. But, yeah, I mean, it was unnerving. And then you get the unnerving voice of Tom Noonan, who speaks in this sort of laid back kind of that. But you realize, he would drink your blood, slit your throat while looking at you. Like, he just has this unassuming calm that is really scary.
Yeah, even I think that's his main defining characteristic as an actor, at least as a villain.
Yeah,
and he's pretty clearly unsettlingly villainous early on. His whole story is weird, and it doesn't really hang together. And I think that Samantha should be a little more weirded out than she is.
Yeah,
when Megan is the one who has enough good sense to be prepared for weirdness and be prepared to flee, that's not a good sign for your heroine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about her friend Megan. Golden Globe nominee Greta Gerwig.
She of the live-action music video Arcade Fire.
Yes.
At the Online Music Awards or whatever, and Frances Ha.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that. Okay. So, very cool. So, well, I knew I had seen her in other things. I had to look it up on IMDb after it was over, but the face just rung a bell. But the Farrah hair was another one of those things. I was like, oh, that's very 80s, very 70s and 80s. And my wife said, oh, yes, very much. She remembered people doing that when she was growing up, and then even on into later on, so I don't know. It's kind of neat, but they go to eat together, and we get a clue here. And that's one of the things I'll say about this movie is there's nothing in it that's incidental. Like, everything is there for a reason. And two things I have noticed is, one, how sparsely populated this college is and this college town is. And did we ever get a date specific of when this is taking place?
Just when there was the lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like a college on a break.
Yeah, it's like fall break or something. I've worked at colleges for years, and when they go on fall break or spring break or whatever, it's a ghost town in the small college towns I've lived and worked in, and that one definitely feels that way. And so I thought, the roommate would be hanging around because she's into her cocaine party scene or whatever, but Samantha, of course, be hanging around because she doesn't have transportation and nowhere else to go, and she's trying to live off campus and get her life together and stuff. And we meet her friend Megan, who, I guess, we're to infer from her that she's kind of well off and a little bit of a spoiled brat, but she's also a good person. At least she seems to really care for Samantha.
Yeah, they seem like actual friends in spite of everything.
Yeah, all the differences that they have with one another.
Yes, they're very much the 80s mismatched comedy pair.
Yeah. So, but the kind of things that you saw, part of those tropes was, the really popular pretty girls that were friends with sort of the mousy, quiet girls. I mean, I think she reminds me of kind of the way Annie and Linda were juxtaposed to Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie and Halloween. I keep going back to Halloween, but even though it's a totally different kind of movie, but the vibe is the same. And that's what I'm feeling.
It's really hard not to go back to Halloween because it looks awfully similar. Like I have no doubt that Ty West watched Halloween dozens of times before he even sat down to write this movie, because it kind of feels it's got that kind of sparse feel of Halloween. Like
I think he watched that, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the Amityville Horror for whatever reason, and actually a little bit of the original Black Christmas. I got that.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Black Christmas regarding that big empty house and the way there's all these surprises that we see that she doesn't see. And by surprises, I mean corpses.
All those things are definitely playing in here. Peeping Tom, all of that stuff. And I think, again, it's part of this guy is not an idiot. He knows how to do the references right. I mean, that's the thing that made Scream such a unique horror film, was it was a horror film, totally aware that it was a horror film, and then played off of it ironically, right? These films are going back to a different time before we knew everything, but still playing it smart. Like, Samantha doesn't make the greatest choices here by any means, but she doesn't do anything that seems so out of the ordinary that you or I wouldn't have done in the same situation, right? Like, I think that's what makes us endeared to her, because, I mean, her friend basically gives her an out. Like, look, I'll call my dad. It's no big deal, and she's like, no, I kind of want to do it on my own. So that's endearing for us to her. I mean, makes us really want to root for her. Yeah,
she could have taken the easy way out and didn't.
And the lesson is she probably should have.
And the lesson is, kids, if someone offers you money, take it.
Unless they want you to sit with their weird, mother-in-law. So, but yeah, I mean, I love the whole thing is that, she finally we meet the roommate, that scene, and then she gets the message, she calls back. And I love this thing that Noonan never answers the phone. He always, it's always left the message. It gets to the answering machine or whatever, and then he'll either pick up or he'll call her back. And I wanted to get your thought on maybe why that was, because I don't know. I was wondering why he just never answered the phone.
Well, I think it's because it's more unsettling when someone picks up while you're recording a message.
Yeah.
Back when that was the thing that happened.
Yeah.
And it also feels more like he's screening the other calls that may or may not be coming in for this position and just looking for Sam. It makes me at least feel like she's the well-chosen victim, like they've been waiting for her to respond.
It seems that way for sure, even in spite of what he'll say later, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But they go to the house. Megan gives her the ride out there, and they're in the Volvo. And I love the way this thing is shot and stuff. It's from the back seat. It's not the standard 2-shot up front. It's like you're laying down in the back seat watching them have this conversation. And that was a touch from a film era gone by that you just don't see anymore. And so I enjoyed that.
I kind of wish that somebody would bring it back. I mean, besides Ty West, obviously. I like it just caters to the whole voyeuristic feel the film has. Like, it feels like you're watching someone secretly, dance around inside a house.
Yeah, it is a very voyeuristic film. I think you're right. It was the camera for the audience is the fly on the wall. That you wish you could be in a scary situation like that, or that you're going to play as the avatar for that situation. And so, I don't know. It does make it different. But they get to the house, and I love how Megan is automatically suspicious, but we get other clues too, that if on first viewing, I don't know if you catch, I definitely didn't until the second or third time I saw it, but Megan calls out the kind of car that's parked in the driveway, and then when the couple leaves in a little bit, they leave in a different vehicle. And so that's something to note. But I love how she is the skeptical one along the way, but she's also going to sit there and eat all the dude's candy. And I don't know. I thought that was neat. The weirdest thing is how they introduced Tom Noonan proper here. right? Is he opens the door, and I imagine in real life he probably does tower over these two young women, because he's about 6'5" or so, and he's just a beanpole.
He's 6'3".
He is? Okay.
Yeah, which is tall enough.
Yeah, because they're both like 5'2", probably. So.
Oh yeah.
And he's standing up in the doorway too, and so that all you see is his hand. You hear that voice, and then he brings him in, and we finally get one good shot of him. And I don't know, I again found all of that very unsettling and just setting the mood of weird. And then his reaction to the fact that there's two of them there, and he calls Samantha into the kitchen, and he's having this whole freak out about, I can only pay one of you. And it's like, dang it, you brought somebody else. Like, that's going to totally screw up his plan, because he knows I'm going to have somebody by themselves in this house to be able to pull off what we want to pull off.
But it's done in such a style that it both feels unsettling, but it's not an immediate, you should flee this house sort of red flag. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
At least not to me. It's just unnerving enough that you can still ignore it.
Right. And you look at it from Samantha's point of view, Megan is supposed to be the logical conscience. This is weird. This dude is weird. It's not a babysitting job. It's sitting for his mother-in-law. That's strange. You just need to get out of here. That's the logic. But Samantha, who's the realist at the moment, is like, yeah, that's for sure, but I need $300 by Monday. This is $400. So I'm already started on next month's rent. It's just a few hours. How bad can it really be? And we've all worked for in that kind of moment and stuff, right? I mean, look, I remember proctoring standardized tests on the weekend sometimes, and going, well, it won't be. This only 4 hours of my life, and it's the 4 longest hours of my life it would ever be. But it was worth the $50 or whatever they were going to pay me to do it. So, because at that time, that made a difference. So, it's amazing, I think that's one of the fun things to think about, and especially people, our age, is to look back and to think about what you put up with when you have to make money. So, Yeah,
in my case, it was pulling dried leaves off of tobacco stalks in an isolated middle of nowhere cold barn.
Wow, that is probably a Children of the Corn sequel waiting to happen.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
By fun, I mean unnerving.
Yeah, exactly. You're just ready to pull those things and be done. So, but that's Samantha's whole thing. Is she's sticking it out. So Megan's like, okay, fine. So she leaves, and the offer at that point has gone up to $400, which I was like, man, $400. That's a lot of money to me now. That would have been like a whole lot of money way back then. I was impressed with that.
I think that it's such a big offer kind of helps play up he's just clearly he's got some kind of real job. He's just a little, eccentric.
Yeah, rich, weird dude, basically.
Yeah, living in some isolated house out in the middle of nowhere with the only place you can call for pizza delivery.
Yeah. Let's talk about the whole reason, though, he's looking for a sitter is because this lunar eclipse is really important to he and his wife, is what he says. And, even Megan asked him, are you some kind of an astronomer? And he goes on and on about the view and all this stuff. And he's like, no, not so much. And it sets up the idea that something's not right about that, right? Like, it's weird.
Well, as long as she orders pizza, everything's going to be okay.
Right, yeah, he keeps on about the pizza. Like, he's upset. It's almost like Halloween 4 where they keep talking about getting the scoop of ice cream. It's like, hey, let's get some ice cream. So, but yeah, it just goes on and on. But
I always did. I'm sure that if Megan had overheard that, she would have assumed it was some sort of lunar eclipse key party they were rushing off to.
Yeah, something weird going on. So, but again, she's left in the den all by herself. And then while Megan is sort of waiting in the other area for the Mr. Ullman to finish up what he's doing, here comes his wife, Mary Woronov, right? Another scream queen of years gone by.
Yes, you for a big period there in the 80s, you could not have a movie that didn't have Mary Woronov in it. It seems like, because she was in everything from Rock and Roll High School, Buck Rogers. She was on Eating Raoul,
All manner of Corman stuff too, right?
Night of the Comet, yeah.
Oh, Night of the Comet. I've forgotten about that one, but yeah. So,
Chopping Mall and TerrorVision back to back in 1986.
You know what? I forgot she was in Who was she in TerrorVision?
She was the creepy wife swapping.
That was
wife.
her. Oh my goodness. We reviewed that way back when. I had totally forgotten that. So wow, I forgot she was. I knew her. I didn't look up her oeuvre, but I have seen her in 100 things. Again,
she's really distinctively tall and odd looking.
Yeah, almost reminded me a little bit of Colleen Dewhurst in the original When a Stranger Calls. Just has this look that, I don't know, it unnerves you, but at the same time, it's like hard life, is this sort of the look on her face is what you get. So like
a rumpled dignity kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Like not bad, but just you can tell there's weather and mileage there that's intriguing. So, but
she's seen some stuff. She was also in Devil's Rejects.
Oh, I forgot. Well, again, we're coming full circle with our stunt casting, but yeah, that's right. So, the thing about that gets me is, as goofy, or not as goofy, as unnerving as Tom Noonan is in this movie, she is like double that. Like the minute she walks in the room, it's like ice has just gone up the back of my scalp. It is really, really spooky. Just the way she looks and the way she talks. It's all in those subtle little things, but I love that. I thought it was fantastic.
She's great. She's really great in this role. And she's shot in a way that really kind of accentuates that she's this really tall, odd woman. Like, she just looks everything looks slightly wrong about the way she's dressed.
Yeah, she's wearing like a black, almost like a cape looking thing. It's a strange outfit she's got going on. And she's got a fur, and she talks about having been down in the basement to get the furs, which is another clue because we'll see Samantha find them later in a closet. But, I don't know. I just thought that was...
That's also not a place you keep fur.
Yeah, in a basement. Yeah,
in a damp basement, because I mean, if that place is anything like my house, that basement is damp all the time.
Well, that's interesting to think of. Having never grown up with a basement or lived in a place with a basement, I wouldn't know that. But my wife said the same thing. So she's like, "That's a weird place to keep a fur." And I was like, "Well, maybe it's insulated," because I knew people that had one that was like totally finished or whatever. But
yeah, but I don't think that house would have a finished basement though.
It didn't look like, even though it was a nice looking place, it did look like there would be an attic and a basement that were just the sort of the wreck place, to just stick stuff. But I don't know. It's all in the way she delivers lines, and I love though that, and this lends credence to your theory that they've been waiting on Samantha or somebody like Samantha, even in spite of what he said about the other girl didn't work out. I don't think there ever was another girl. I think he was just behind on doing stuff. I think they've been waiting on her for a long time because she talks about, "Oh, you'll be fine. We know you'll be fine." It's like they've done this sort of mystical background check on her or something.
Yeah, it feels like they've definitely been following her around. They've done their homework on her. They put the flyer in a place where she would find it.
Mm-hmm.
It does lend credence to your idea that this could have been a setup from the very beginning, but like even involving like Dee Wallace.
Exactly, because she was in a hurry to get out of there, which is sort of strange when somebody's about to make money off of you. They tend to not want to leave so fast. So that's why I've always thought that. But again, I think we're supposed to read Dee Wallace as just the sweet lady that's giving her a deal and being nice, and circumstances, lead Samantha down this road to hell, basically.
Yeah, unlike Mary Mornov and Tom Noonan, Dee Wallace just doesn't naturally read evil to me.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think she does.
Like, Tom Noonan could offer me like some hard candy, and I would just be tasting for the poison. You know what I'm saying?
Tom Noonan could host the Muppets, and I would say you need to rate it R for Thriller. I mean, really, this guy is just creepy. So, and I think that's his charm too, and I think that's part of why he's good at what he does. But Megan finally just leaves, and then the Ullmans leave, and that's the other clue too. And it's a flashback later, and I almost wonder if somebody from the studio made him put that in there, or if he did it knowing people wouldn't have caught it the first time. But it's not the same car that they drove up behind that they leave in, and she's kind of looking around the house, figuring out what to do, and she comes on that pool table. And did you notice how the pool balls were arranged?
No,
they're in a pentagram, and I had a friend of mine told me that, and I said no way. And so when I watched it again these 2 times, I was like, aha, they are. That's another one of those subtle clues. He said you got to remember, there's nothing in this film that is incidental. Everything is there for a reason. And
and I don't believe there. I don't think there was a studio to request that inset shot. I think that was just him helping further connect the dots for everybody.
Excellent point, and good to give him credit for it, because then that's something that a good director can and will do. Though I guess I'm just jaded moviegoer that knows a lot of times studios will go, nobody knows what's going on there, man. Put another shot back in.
Yeah, but I mean, a guy who went to the effort to track down 16 millimeter film, who actually got the movie released on VHS. Yeah, in the big video rental clamshell box. I don't think that he's missing a trick.
No, this is true.
On his own, yeah.
And that would be the reason studios would hire him to do other work, is that, well, if he can figure that out on his own, then hey, let's give him some real money to work with and see what he does. And there haven't really been any effects yet, but when they get to the special effects, I guess the first big one is coming up now. I got to say, I'm really impressed with the limited budget that this movie supposedly has with what they pull off in terms of visual effects. And it comes when Megan pulls over. Does her car stall? What is it that makes her pull over and start smoking a cigarette off the side of the road there?
I think her car stalls out. Yeah, I think she is having some kind of car problem.
Okay, so see, I thought that was like a setup, because she encounters this young man that we'll later learn is the son of the Ullmans that's out there, and he seems to have just come out of nowhere to help light her cigarette for her, and she's freaking out about it, as you naturally would. And I took that as he did something to the car, thinking, oh, she's the babysitter. If she tries to drive away, we'll just kidnap her.
Yeah, that was kind of how I ended up reading it too. Once you get the pretty shocking reveal of his true nature.
It's a great. Well, it is a moment where my wife let out an audible gasp and her jaw held open for 40 seconds. I promise, at the end of it, because I knew what was coming. She had no idea, and we're sitting there, and he just asked Megan, "You're not the babysitter?" She's like, "No, my friend," and doesn't even finish the sentence, and he blows her face off with that 44 Magnum. And I mean, I was like, what a shocking turn for this film. 37 minutes into it, it's been very slow, nothing going on, and then all of a sudden, boom. And I mean, it splatters her face across that windshield. That was an impressive visual effect.
It was like Tom Savini good.
Yes.
He's the guy who did the infamous shotgun through the windscreen in Maniac.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely up there with that. It makes me think it's almost inspired by that. And it's also kind of shocking, especially watching the movie now, that this is like killing off she's like a legitimate star now at this point.
Yeah. Oh, no, and she's somebody she's one of the only other people we've had any establishing conversations with.
Yeah, it's like kind of like in Psycho, where they kill off Janet Leigh halfway through the movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big turn of the film. And I think that's another one that we haven't referenced, but that is certainly an influence here for Ty West, because that's this kind of move, is that you really want to turn everybody on their head. Well, this is the way to do it, because I didn't see that coming the first time I saw this. Clearly my wife did, and I don't think anybody does. I mean, it's because it's so sudden. That's the thing, is in any other movie, he'd have waited for her to turn around, then he'd have grabbed her and drug her out by the tree and beat her. And I mean, it would have gone on forever. This one, nope, boom, done. And then he just kind of stops her car. And the creepiest bit is that he leans down and gets her lit cigarette out of her dead fingers and proceeds to just go ahead and smoke it on down.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite character touches, just establishing that this is a dude who has seen some murders before. This is not a guy who is new to violence. This is somebody who is an experienced killer of blondes.
Yeah, or of people, whatever it might be. That's the thing that gets me in this, is that the gore in this is very much out of the later 80s, I would say. More of the Friday the 13th kind of style versus the Halloween, if you will. It's much more gory, but it's still played with the suspense, like the early Friday the 13th films, where there still was suspense. Yeah, it's
definitely gorier than your like Halloween, but there were plenty of gory movies back then too.
True.
It's almost in a sense. It's almost kind of. It makes me think of like one of the Black Sunday has some pretty gory parts in it.
Yes, it does.
Maniac, of course.
Yeah, Maniac's a very gory film. I think. Yeah, Henry.
Henry Portrait of a Serial
Killer.
Yeah.
Very gory film. Absolutely. Yeah.
This is very. It's very much executed in the style of like Henry.
Yes.
It's very slow. There's not a lot going on. You're talking and establishing weirdness, and then all of a sudden you get like just out of nowhere a straight up brutal murder.
Exactly, and then he ditches her car, so already Samantha is doomed. At this point, it's like, well, we don't know what they're up to yet. Clearly, something tied to this, lunar eclipse, and the title of the movie is The House of the Devil. So I'm going to guess here there's a ritual coming soon. What I'm sitting here actually actively asking myself is, if this movie does an exorcism, am I going to get up and walk out? Because that is a trope that I am personally tired of seeing. I think it gets overused. All the time. It just seems to be the go-to default. Now, luckily, they don't do that here, but I actually caught myself wondering if they would trope out, as I called it.
Yeah, that's. I don't think I was afraid of that so much as much as you are. I'm not really. I mean, I'm kind of sick of exorcism as a plot device, but not to the point where, like, in a movie like House of the Devil, if I don't get some kind of devilness, I'm going to be disappointed. I mean, I mean, that's more of what I was expecting for sure, but
I felt like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. You are going to have some Satan in your House of the Devil movie, right? You are going to have some dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour. So I kept waiting for it, but I thought, well, we just shot the pretty girl's face off. So clearly now I'm paying attention. So
it's funny. I pulled up her Greta Gerwig's IMDb page, and it turns out she's 5'9".
Oh, wow.
So Tom Noonan is just creepily giant.
He is just really lanky. So
well, they kind of shoot it in such a way that it accentuates both him and Mary Warnover are tall people.
Yeah.
And they shoot them in a way that accentuates their angular, skinny weirdness.
Yeah, definitely over the two females that are a part of this film. That's for sure. So
because Mary Warnover's 5'9" too, but they shoot her in such a way that she looks like she's 8 feet tall.
Exactly. Yeah, she looks much taller. So they, that's all done with lifts and heels and stuff. I mean, I could see how they pull that off, but it's interesting to note too. But I mean, that's the big turn, and now like I said, this dude is really into this lunar eclipse pizza, and Megan is shot. Samantha's messing around the house, and then we get the music video. The fix. One thing leads to another. And this is another one of my little geeky moments to notice. Boy, nothing is taken for granted here. Everything's done on purpose. Being a guitar guy and a guitar player, I happen to know things about that song that I wouldn't know otherwise. But knowing it gives a whole level of just creepiness as to why it was used there. One, the lyric to it is all about people that are deceptive and lying, and one thing leads to another. It just goes down the hill, right? And that's what's happening to Samantha here. Is she's becoming braver around that house, kind of dancing around upstairs, and what that'll ultimately lead her to. But that song, the guitar riff for it, all of it is based off of the 3 strings on the 6th fret, 6, 6, 6 in a row. The whole song, the whole lick breaks off of that. And of course, knowing that, I was like, wait a minute, I think that's one of those 666 riffs, because I just used to pay attention to that kind of stuff. And sure enough, I looked it up and I was like, I knew it. And I was like, I bet you that is not arbitrary. I don't know if you could ever get Ty West to admit that. Anybody's ever thought of it? Maybe I'm projecting, but I just felt like it's another instance where not only the song fits, but just the way the song's even played is fitting the whole motif of what he's going for.
See, now that's a phenomenal bit of information, and I wouldn't put it past him to know that, but I had no idea where you were going with that. And that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's one of those just odd little things, again, to note, but I thought, I don't know, it's cool, but I love the way Samantha dances around the house here. It's very Breakfast Club. The dance scene from that, I sort of felt like I was in a John Hughes movie for a minute. So I'm in that 80s, and they have to do something to get our minds off of what we just saw, right? Which was Megan's face being splattered. So if they're going to re-nerve us, as it were, this is going to be the way to do it.
Yeah, and it really works. And it also sets up her exploring the house in a way that doesn't feel like her looking around the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because she's not really paying attention. She's just kind of bebopping along,
Yeah.
shoot some pool, go into the kitchen,
Well, yeah,
go break a vase, that kind of thing.
Yeah, she rearranges the pool table. She plays a game of pool. She runs around. And I'm going, this song's only about 4 minutes long, so she gets a lot done. Or maybe she just did like a lot of us did. She knew the art of the rewind. You could hit it just right on your tape, and you can keep going back and back to the same song. But she was dancing around for a while, and then, of course, bumps into the vase. And, now we've got to clean it up. And in the process of cleaning it up, she makes a discovery, and then the audience is let in on the discovery, right? We see the furs in the closet, and we see pictures of a bunch of other people.
Yeah, suggesting that this is not the house of the folks who are arranging for elder care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And is the dead family the family that's in the pictures?
I think so, because that's what we get, is that we pan to the room where she doesn't go in, but there's a family laid out on the floor. There's a man, a wife, and then a little boy whose chest is totally cracked open in the middle of a bloody pentagram.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were. I assume they're supposed to be the same people. I didn't see. I was too busy staring at the pentagram and the cracked open chest to look at faces.
Yeah, again, more good makeup effect, and like his eyes seem to be carved out. The stuff went down in there that is clearly not on the up and up, and now for sure what you've suspected all along is that the Ullmans are not who they say they were, and they have basically just taken over this house because of the view that you get for the lunar eclipse, which apparently is all a part of this big ritual.
I can only assume that's the reason this house was chosen. Plus, it's out in the middle of nowhere. They do a really good job of establishing that this is like uncomfortably far away from everything.
Yeah, was it Megan says we had to look at a map?
They had to look at a map.
Yeah, back before there was MapQuest or Garmin kids, that's what we had to do. So
she might have even called AAA and had them do a trip plan for her.
You never know. This is true.
Set up the triptych. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So I mean, she knows exactly what she's doing. So, but she's out in the middle of nowhere, so she's kind of unnerved herself a little bit. But she cleans this whole thing up, and she's like, it'll be cool. So she calls for the pizza, right? And she's already called for the pizza. And it's taking a long time to get there, and a longer time to get there, and a longer time to get there. And at that point, she's starting to get weirded out, right?
Yes, that's where we get the good. That's where we get the good moment of the shot, the exterior shot of the house. The lights just clicking on one by one, and then the one light being on upstairs the whole time.
Yeah.
Where grandma is supposedly hanging out.
Yeah, or the devil or whatever. We'll get to whatever she is in a minute. But you got that, and there's also the van that's parked out on the road that, you don't know what that's all about until we'll learn later. And when the pizza finally shows up, it's brought to her by the same guy that shot Megan in the face, right? So now we know she's in serious trouble.
Yeah, and he skulks around watching to make sure she actually eats the pizza.
Yeah, so which is another clue that something's up with the pizza, which you don't know at first, you figure it out later, and then that and you're like, I should have seen it coming, right? But that's what they do.
Yeah. At what point does she call 911?
I think it's right after she gets the pizza. It's somewhere along in there, and she dials 911 on the old rotary phone. And I didn't know this is a famous voice though, right?
Yes, this the operator is the voice of the current millennial generation, Miss Lena Dunham.
Oh, okay. So I thought that sounded very familiar. So
doing a voice.
Yeah, must be a friend of Ty West, I would imagine. Probably just one of those favors. Yeah,
I think they all ran in the same kind of circle.
That would make sense. So I could see that. So yeah. So I don't know. I thought the whole setup there is though that she has her moment, and this is the best part of these kind of movies is when when your protagonist has a moment that they can get out of this, and then they don't take it. They talk themselves out of it. That makes everything that happens to them much more tragic as it goes along, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this movie also always makes me want to get pizza.
It does. It does. It is heavy on the pizza. In fact, I was eating pizza last night as I watched this. So oddly enough, and if you're ever in Auburn, Alabama, I recommend the Little Italy. So can't go wrong with the Sicilian. So anyway, so that's getting cut because they got to pay for that. So anyway, but yeah, she starts eating the pizza. She starts messing around the house again, and then now this is where everything goes into overdrive, right? Like she's skulking around the house. She's trying to figure out what's going on, and she turns on a light, and boom, the lights go out.
Yeah, that's the when she takes her first bite of that pizza, which clearly tastes funny because she throws a whole slice away.
Yeah,
that right there is when that's kind of the flipping the switch, as it were, where her fate is sealed.
Yeah, exactly. Because she starts to see the door from upstairs slowly creak open. It's got light in there, but there's no light in the rest of the house. And before the door opens, she passes out. And when she wakes up, we wake up to our good strobe light inducing moment here. And she's basically tied to the concrete floor in a pentagram in her underwear, gagged and bound, and random stuff is going down. Like the son walks in his black robe, Mr. Ullman walks in with his cane in the black robe, Mrs. Ullman walks in, and then what we're to presume is Grandma, the devil incarnate, I guess, walks in. The old witch. I called her the Blair Witch.
Yeah, the crone.
Yeah. And
the gypsy from Drag Me to Hell.
There you go. Yes, very much that way. Like she would have been her older sister or something, But now, walk me through what happens here. What does she do to Samantha exactly?
Well, they've got her down on the ground, and they're like fondling her stomach and like painting. I think they're painting another pentagram on her stomach. I can't really tell. They're painting some sort of occult design on her stomach.
Right, in blood.
Yeah, and then they put blood in what looks like a cow's head, and they pour it into her mouth.
Oh, it's not just putting blood. It's the witch cuts her wrists open.
Oh, yes, that's
into
right.
It, and then pours it down her throat, like gags her with it.
It's got to be fresh blood. You can't summon any kind of supernatural monster without fresh blood. I mean, you can't just go down to the Costco and get a value size tub of human blood. You got to do this thing. Yeah, this has got to be organic.
Yeah,
real grandma blood.
This is not a cat. No, this is real person blood. No, I'm with you. But this is when this movie has now gone into what I called like Amityville level overdrive. Like it's just gone crazy here at the end. Or it's also that same ending that like when Laurie Strode finds all the dead people in the house. Just everything hits at once, right? It's all that same stuff. And it's almost paced the same way too. And I think I appreciated that and sort of caught that watching it this time, having recently revisited that film a bit for a review. I thought, this guy knows what he's doing, and this tension works. The music, we haven't talked much about the score. We've talked about the 80s songs here, but the score here, just those whining strings and stuff.
Yeah, the psycho string music. This is one of the few moments where the soundtrack makes itself known.
Yeah.
Aside from the pool playing dance routine, this is one of the few times the score pokes its nose in, and it's really well done, really tense feeling music.
I think the thing I like about it is that it's competing with the sound of everything that's going on in the room. Her screaming, gurgling the blood, the seance that's going on. I mean, you almost feel like there's chanting in the background. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. And some way she breaks free from all of this and scratches Grandma across the face, jumps up, and I'm gonna tell you that's the fastest untying job I've ever seen. I'm like, whoever tied her up didn't take knot tying class in Boy Scouts. Those were easy to get out of for her.
Yeah, well, maybe they skipped that day in Evilo's class.
could be. But she gets out of there quick. I love her. She stabs Ullman, but she fights with the son, and another good Tom Savini-esque effect. She basically busts one of his eyeballs for him.
Oh yeah, that was an awesome effect right there.
Yeah.
Even though you see him blinking his injured eye later, it's still really terrifying to behold. That's another one of my weird things is the
eyeballs.
I saw the the zombie to Lucio Fulci eyeball gimmicks way too early in life.
Yeah. So I relate a lot of this to like Dario Argento kind of stuff. You know, very Suspiria and all that kind of stuff. It just feels just bug nuts in a lot of ways, just crazy. And all these things going on, and she's she's covered in blood. You know, her blood, grandma's blood, a whole lot of blood. That white sheet is just covered in it. She runs upstairs and she slips and falls on the floor, and there we see the body of Megan. And I'm like, I guess they were just going to burn the house down at the end of this.
That was my assumption.
Yeah,
I mean that's what I would do.
I know. I thought, well, I guess that's the reason to leave the body just bleeding out on the floor there, which I don't know. I didn't know how much she would still have left in her with that gaping hole in her head, having sat in the car for an hour or however long it's been. But I don't know. Very, very weird, because it's just more of the letting your protagonist know how screwed she really is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's.
But it's really it's well placed in the narrative, though. That's a good place for that kind of reveal. Just when you think she's going to get away because she just gouged the dude's eyeball out and has fled, then you get the well-timed slip. I mean, it makes sense because the place is just covered in blood at this point, and even she's just like straight up covered in blood.
And even the dude chasing her, the son, is chasing her. He's slipping around, and he finally beads down on her and shoots her. And with only one good eye, of course, he doesn't kill her. He just hits her right in the arm. And she goes to the ground.
He doesn't kill her for a reason.
Well, you say that, but I was going to ask you about the thing he does next. His next move is he, cocks that gun at her as he's standing over her. And I'm like, is he really going to shoot her, knowing where this movie is going,
I think at that point he's no longer with the program.
I guess so. I guess he's like, screw the sacrifice. We'll just do it next time. I guess when you lose an eye, all bets are off.
I would say so. I mean, that's a pretty big loss right there. You're gonna have to bust out the Days of Our Lives eye patch, and it's just never gonna be the same.
I know you're never gonna be able to not explain that the rest of your life. Exactly.
That was the soap opera with the dude with the eye patch, right?
I think so. There's been so many. I think all of them have sported someone with an eye patch, but I know exactly what you meant when you said that. So yeah,
it's another '80s reference because my mom just ate that show up.
Yeah. So I think all of them had one of those. But you're right. But Megan, of course, has a knife that she's used. She's grabbed a kitchen knife, and she leans up, and just all you hear is, and this is another good moment of the era of film this is trying to emulate, is you don't see it, you just hear the sound, the sweet. And you realize really quickly she has slit this dude's throat wide open, and he falls back against the banister and bleeds out on the steps and drops the gun.
Yeah, well, when you go from ear to ear like that, it doesn't take very long.
Yeah,
and it was really well crafted. You're right. I do love that. Most of the movie is pretty quiet. Mm-hmm. You get incidental sounds. You get a lot of the fix, but when it's time to use noise, they use noise really well.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the Foley work here is amazing, and I credit a lot of that in the editing process to what Ty West is able to sort of put together with his group of people. It's fantastic. And she runs into a room, and I love this scene with Mary Warnoff, and she comes in and she, just cusses her out. It's like, you ungrateful little, and leaves her on the ground and kicks her a couple times, and then she takes off the wig, right? Because at some point, Megan has found all this black hair in the bathtub, just sort of randomly, and you realize now that this woman has cut this wig up to sort of make her look like it's her hair, but she's nearly bald, and she's got this graying hair, so you don't even really know how old she is. And I love too that there's no sound at all when she gets stabbed in the back. It's just like, oh, and then she falls backward with that knife.
Yeah, that was really well done. I wasn't sure about the I wasn't connecting the hair in the tub to the wig until she pulls the hair off. I just assumed she had a weird haircut.
Yeah, because it is a terrible haircut. Let's just say.
Yeah, it's kind of I think that establishes the whole thing that these people have been doing this much longer, planning this much longer than even it looks. Like, this is like their once in a generation kind of plan. My assumption was anyway, was that once 1,000-year-old grandma was uncovered, that all these people were secretly much, much older than they look, possibly through some sort of nefarious means, black magic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that's what we're supposed to read out of it. But Samantha has now foiled 2 of them, and she begins to run away. But as she's running, she has these sort of, headache-inducing, seizure slamming against the wall visions of grandma dripping blood out of her mouth and laughing at her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very weird insert stuff, but well done. Again, something I would expect from that era of film.
Yeah, it definitely feels era appropriate. The kind of punch-ins that they're doing, and they do a lot of fun in-camera effects to simulate her queasiness from the drugs, her passing out, her waking up. That's all done in camera,
right?
And it looks really cool. And it's really kind of a thing you still see that some, but not as much as you did back then.
No, not at all. And one of the best effects is when she pulls up her shirt and you see like these veiny black lines running across her stomach, which is also smeared with blood, but is now also having it's like a spider bite reaction underneath it, which you're like, well, what's that all about? Clearly this is not good.
Yeah, that's bad. That's how you know things are bad.
And so it's also too, just a flashback for a minute to that ceiling, or when they've got her in the attic and all that going on. I got a Rosemary's Baby kind of vibe off of that too, with when the demon is on top of her and all that stuff. I mean, it was definitely a feel for that. I think he's definitely looking at that kind of film and evoking that. Ty West wants us to remember that and feel that. Because the people that are going to watch this are people that have seen all this stuff, probably, right? I mean, that's...
Oh, yeah. It's not generally not a movie that's aimed towards neophytes.
No.
He's very much a horror guy working in horror.
Yeah.
And even his steps outside of horror that he's going to be doing, like in the Valley of... He's got a movie coming out in a Valley of Violence. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a Blumhouse movie. He's finally come full circle, and he's working with Jason Blum.
Exactly. So, and I think that's going to be like a bit of a horror western or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a horror western, which is going to be a tough genre to pull off. But I think if anybody can make it work, I mean, and he's got a phenomenal cast. This is really diverging, but I do like the fact that he has come full circle, and he's going to be working with Blumhouse.
Oh yeah, no,
he's going to be getting a decent budget because he's got Karen Gillan, Ethan Hawke, yet again.
I think Ethan Hawke is friends with Blum somewhere along the way. Like they have to be buddies because he's in a ton of these movies, The Purge and Sinister and all kinds of stuff. They've got to be like old buddies or coffee drinking friends or something. So
yeah, but he works in all those movies. Yep. And with his goatee that he's got, he looks very Western, Old West looking.
Oh, look, yeah, put a duster on him and he's fine. I agree. So, but back to Samantha here. She's killed pizza guys. She's stabbed the old lady. She's running downstairs and she, reinserts the knife into Ullman, who's already hurt by the steps, right? And I love how she's just running, screaming her head off. She's got the gun now, and he's like, Samantha, wait, hold on. I'm like, no, that's hilarious. I actually laughed.
His reaction is the funniest part to me, and it's also one of the scariest things.
Yeah, he's like totally calm about all of this.
It's like, all right, now it's time to be reasonable. Let's see if we can come to an agreement here. You give birth to the Antichrist, and you can kill me anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was. It was weird because, of course, they chased to a cemetery, which my wife had the greatest reaction to. She was like, yes, let's go to a cemetery because this night isn't any weirder yet. So I said, yeah, I imagine at that point, if you allow logic to creep in, that certainly comes around. But another one of probably the reasons this house was chosen, it's the house by the cemetery to go for old school horror movies. So
yeah, it's a good excuse for why the house is so isolated too.
Exactly.
I mean, nobody really wants to live next door to a cemetery.
Yeah, people don't set out to do that anymore.
Well, I have. when we were house hunting, one of my favorite houses was by a cemetery.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yes. It was like the street dead ended into the cemetery, and it was on the end of the street. So my neighbors were corpses.
That would have been quite interesting.
And my current house is right near two very large cemeteries.
Oh, wow.
Currently, yeah.
I bet Halloween's really fun at your place. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I love how she's down in the cemetery now. She's got the gun held to her head. And I love how he's reasoning with her, like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Just calm down. And then she points it to him, and he's like, you want to kill me? Go ahead. I'm not in charge here. I'm just his messenger. And I was like, whose messenger? But I love how Samantha doesn't try to have a conversation with it. She realizes, no, there's only one way out. And it's what Ozzy Osbourne taught us in 86 or whatever. There's one solution here. And so she puts the gun to her head, and then boom. And I mean, it's again another one of those Savini-like effects. The head explodes out, the whole bit, and she just drops.
Yeah, there are chunks.
Yeah.
Chunks fly out of her head.
And then the movie does something that it makes me angry at it, because if that had ended there, if it had gone to black and credits had rolled, standing O, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
We wake up in the hospital. She's got her head bandaged. All this is going on, and the nurse lays that line that you said in the plot summary there. Oh, you'll both be fine. And I'm like, how? Your brain is on the ground. You're not. She's never going to have a normal life. There's no way you can convince me of that. What is it? Because she's infected with the mystical? Is that what it saves her?
That could be what they're implying. I mean,
yeah.
Grandma was clearly 300 years old.
Yes, true. So.
And Mary Warnov is no spring chicken either.
No.
So I'm thinking that might be what they were going for.
Okay.
As in what saved her was like the touch of evil or the power of whatever thing that needs her to bring it to fruition.
I guess so. The thing that got me about it, though, was really I felt like you made this a really brave choice to have her take that step, which is, while it's not original, it's pretty interesting. And if it had ended there, I'd have been like, that's pretty awesome. That's brave to do that. But then to go with this almost feels too Hollywood for me. Like, I'm like, no, why have this coda at the end? Because it's already unnerving enough. I didn't need to be unnerved more by realizing that Rosemary is going to give birth to the baby. Yes.
Yeah, part of me, like you said, doesn't like the ending, that it's leaving itself open for a sequel. But part of me thinks that that's pretty much the most 80s direction you could make. That's this movie's version of Michael Myers disappearing at the end of Halloween.
Right, which is not left to be open for a sequel. That was just the sting that they came up with and happened to pick up from it.
I think that's what he's going for,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of sting. That she went through all this. She even made the choice to shoot herself, and it still didn't do her any good.
Yeah, well, that's the hopeless part of this thing, is that this girl can't catch a break at all. She's got the worst roommate ever. All right. She does have a pretty nosy friend. He was a good friend, but a nosy friend nonetheless. All right. She's got a really terrible instinct about people. And now she's been infected with the Antichrist. She's been assaulted. She's been shot. And now she shoots herself. So, and it still doesn't kill her. I'm like, man, you can't catch a break, girl.
She's definitely got a case of the Mondays.
No doubt. Well, I think we've teased it enough here at the end. I'm going to ask you final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings for Ty West, The House of the Devil.
I'm going to give it a large popcorn. It's like you said, the stinger can take some of the luster off of it, and I think if it had just ended with her shooting herself, I'd have gone extra large popcorn. But even with that, even with ambivalence towards that, even though I think it was a deliberate choice, because I think everything in this movie was a deliberate, thought-through choice, I still got to go large popcorn. It's a great flick. The lack of budget in no way harms the movie.
Yeah.
For people with a love of, or at least a memory of 80s horror, it's going to feel like it fits right in. And the first time I saw it, I thought it was like your wife. I thought it was a movie from the 80s too. It plays that string out perfectly. And that's just another, but it's not stuck being a pastiche of the 80s just for the sake of being a pastiche. It works as a movie first and foremost. and then all the 80s stuff just adds to that, I think.
When I watched this, every time I've watched it, I've had pretty well the same reaction to it. I've picked up more and more stuff, and I think that's the testament to this film ultimately, is that the more you watch it, the more you're going to get out of it, because there's something to be gained in repeat viewings of it. And that to me is the best criticism and compliment I can pay to this, is that it rewards you to rewatch it even when you know the big twist. Is it fun to go back through it and see if you can pick up on all the little stuff? And it is. And this movie is strong. I don't care for the way it ends. I mean, we've talked about that now, and for the same reasons. But I still think, again, the fact that it is so deliberate in everything that it's doing, and that it executes all that and it hits it all, is something to be noticed and noted. And so it's not perfect by any means, but it's really, really good. And I think even if you're not into horror films, you can find something to enjoy here with this. There's a good suspense thriller kind of story. You want a good jump, this will give it to you. So I'm going to go large popcorn on it as well. And I'm really curious to see what Ti West is going to do next. This movie he's got coming out, the Western thing that we already talked about, I'm really curious to see how that plays out and to where it goes, because this is the kind of filmmaking in the genre that I think needs to be rewarded more often. As usually happens, though, when people do these kind of things, it gets run to death, right? So people have tried to do this forever. And I even think Ti West tried to repeat his steps with The Innkeepers. And I watched that one and was mostly bored with it. I didn't really go for that one. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think this was definitely a home run. That's more of a good double.
You can't hit a home run every time, I think.
No, very true. So, but a good start nonetheless, and a really interesting film. Glad we got a chance to talk about it here. So, one of your little Halloween treats, folks, here from us at Continuous Play. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and definitely let us know what you think about it. Leave us a review on iTunes if you like the show, and also hit us up on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, you never know. You ask, and you may receive on Twitter. So, now that's not saying we're going to do everything that gets requested, but we do really appreciate your support, gang. And if you do throw something our way that seems like a good idea, we'll definitely take it under consideration. We enjoy doing this podcast and glad to be here to discuss it all with you guys. So for Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.